Hey guys, Brox here. Just wanted to bring a quick D4 video talking about the recent Campfire chat that just happened today that finally showed off some of the Gauntlet gameplay and just kind of give my opinion. I'm not a big D4 player, but if I know some people have definitely found my channel through some of the builds that I put together for Druid a couple seasons back, or season 2 or season 1, I forget which one. I check in from time to time on D4 just to see, if it's getting better. I have a lot of gripes with the game personally, that I think it's just very far behind all the other ARPGs in the genre right now. And even to me, I mean, this is just going to be just transparency. I think it's a little behind Diablo 3 in some areas. So just hard for me to get excited when D4 releases some of these things, and then they come out and they're just a little underbaked. So I wanted to talk about the Gauntlet in that aspect. So the Gauntlet to me, and I know it's going to be mentioned in a lot of videos from more popular streamers who play the game, it just looks like challenge rifts with a couple extra steps. Obviously, we're not taking random builds like we did in challenge rifts in Diablo 3. It's your build that you get to run through, but essentially it's a stagnant dungeon per week that you just try to get the best score in. Monster density looks really low. There's also in the own footage that they put out, areas where the monsters don't respawn and you're backtracking through empty areas because you had just killed the monsters there to try to go to a different section of the dungeon. That feels like always really bad, which is just another issue that they've had since the launch of the game and even pre-launch of the game. And it just looks kind of, to be honest, generic and boring. There's no innovation here outside of the fact that at the end of the dungeon you get to see how many monsters you killed and how fast you did it. Essentially take greater rifts, and then at the end of the greater rift it's like you killed 18 million monsters and you killed the boss, right? Like that's essentially what's happening here. You have a timer just like greater rifts, so you have a period of time that you're going to be allowed to be in the dungeon for. And at the end of that timer, you get your score. And then that score gets posted to the leaderboards. I feel like that this is a consistent problem with Diablo, where they don't go far enough with the tools they have at hand. So one of probably the biggest complaint from the ARPG community. So this is not your average gamer. This isn't your console player. This is like the actual fans who have been around since Diablo 1 and so on, who love this genre, right? And I'm not even talking particularly about blasters, just people who enjoy the race of ARPGs, right? So like the start of a new season, how fast can you go? How do you compare to, what would be referred to as the gods of that particular game? So for instance, an example there would be like, if I went into a PoE season, how far can I get on my character before Ben downs all the uber bosses, right, in PoE? And then you gauge, how much better am I getting season over season? How much stronger? How much is my knowledge of the game getting better? How much closer am I getting to someone who's, like ridiculously good at the game on the leaderboard side? And it also allows the people like Ben to kind of flex that they're the best at the game, right? Best at ARPGs. They get to, finish number 1, and then they get to see how far ahead they are between, number 1 and number 2, him and like Exile, for instance. So when you look at Diablo 4, you don't have that. You really, everyone's just off doing their own thing. You don't really feel connected to the community. And I honestly don't think this Gauntlet's going to bring anybody any closer, because all the Gauntlet in its current form is going to do is just tell you which build is broken that season, right? So it's not even going to be the player. It's just going to be, hey, Bob's charge barb is doing 2 million score while everyone else is only doing 500,000 because charge barb is ridiculously broken right now. That's all the Gauntlet in its current form is really telling us, because there's no real race and they're not releasing it at the start of the season to give anybody like a construct of their own individual player skill. So how I think they should have released this and tweaked it is actually taking a look at like popular games that have come out recently that have the same kind of conceptual idea but a little bit different, that they could have implemented and stolen in some aspects to put into Diablo 4 to make a better, more fun experience. So for me, and I'm going to pull up Paint to kind of give you a better visual idea of what this looks like, because everybody loves Paint, but also to give you kind of a visualization of what I think they should have done with the Gauntlet and how I think this simple change that they could have made could have, one, gave them an actual structured end game. It could, two, give them a on-season launch race, could give them, three, a leaderboard, and give them, four, challenge, right? Something that's drastically missing from Diablo 4 right now is any level of challenge at the end game. And I think the Gauntlet could have been the foundation with a simple change to do all four of those things and actually change the landscape of the issues that Diablo 4 has currently. So I'm going to pull up Paint real quick, and then I'm going to run through kind of the idea and the concept that I think they could change on Diablo 4. Okay, so now that we have Paint pulled up here, here's the idea. The concept is very simple. I'm actually going to steal a component from a very popular game just a couple months back called Dark and Darker, because I think Dark and Darker's concept would work perfectly with what the idea of the Gauntlet sounds like it wanted to be, but the team at Diablo just could not flesh it out far enough. So how they have it set up currently is there's the first floor, and it's the same level as you start World Tier 4. So Tier 70 kind of Nightmare Dungeon level. But what we want to do is we want to add a option at the end of the dungeon to take a blue portal or a red portal, just like Dark and Darker, or change the colors if you need to for, you know, whatever IP limitations are may be there. But the blue portal would essentially let you end the run. So you would just stop, you would end the run, and you would collect your loot, and your score would place you wherever your score would place you, and you would get to know how many monsters you killed on that run. The red portal would take you down to floor number 2, and the monster difficulty would go up, and you would have more limited time at that level. So let's say on the first floor you had 15 minutes available to you to get to the portals. Well, on floor 2, you may only have 13 minutes to find the red and the blue portal. And then once you find the red and the blue portal, if you feel like it's too dangerous to go down another floor, let's say you're playing hardcore, you can exit out, collect your loot, and then move on, and then reset. Or you can take the red floor, or the red portal, and let's say every 10th floor you get a boss. And on that boss stage, you have a 5-minute timer. So at every 10th floor, you have 5 minutes to defeat the boss. And then once you defeat the boss, you would then move down, and you would choose again, blue portal or red portal, and then you would move down to floor 11, and you would start the process over again. The timer would restart at 15 minutes, and then it would go all the way down to 5 by floor 20. Now, what's really cool for Diablo is they already have 5 bosses, so they can at least get to the 50th floor using this strategy. So let's say on the 10th floor, I don't know the name of the bosses, I apologize, but let's say they used the ice boss as an example. So on the 10th floor, you get to fight the ice boss, and they don't even have to create new bosses for this. He can just be as he is. And then if you take the blue portal at the end of that boss run, or at the end of any of the floor runs, the blue portal would end your run. You would get the current score towards, you know, your best high score, and you would get loot based on the level that you go down to. So on floor number 1, let's say you may get 5 items, but if you make it to floor number 2, you get 7 items. If you make it to the boss floor, you get like 10 items and a guaranteed unique or something like that. Then if you decide to go down after the 10th floor, after the boss stage, you then go to a new tier of monster. So this time the monsters would tier up, so you're not stuck at just the World Tier 4 start level of monster or Nightmare Tier 70 levels. The monsters would actually scale, and they would gain a modifier. Now, I had weekly in this. I'm actually rethinking that now, going through editing, that it should just be per season. You don't need weekly modifiers, just make it a flat modifier per season. And then what's cool is by floor 50, then when you get to the Uber Lilith or Uber Doriel fight at the most challenging level in the Gauntlet, that level would have +5 modifiers to it. And that modifier could be set per season to make it very structured for the Diablo 4 team to kind of control the balance of the game, control, you know, how builds are doing, what builds can make it to floor 50, where are builds faltering, how far down can a build get, and then they can fix builds based on that constant. And then what's cool is when you get to that floor 50, you would have 5 minutes to be either Uber Lilith or Uber Dario, or maybe even a combination of both. Bring back having 2 Uber bosses in the same arena to make it super challenging, maybe for a season. But it also allows for you to actually have a start a season race, because now you have a finite endpoint. So instead of, just an arbitrary score that means absolutely nothing to nobody, now your Woodijos, your Bens, your Alkaisers, your Raxes, they can race to a finite point that would say, hey, I'm the best at this game. I got here first. So in this example, I'll put Woodijo number 1, and Woodijo managed to clear floor 50 first. He gets to be at the top of the leaderboard for that season permanently, right? So he's the permanent number 1 player. He gets there first. He gets his name highlighted or something, to, having a purpose to want to come back each season, to actually like have a race component to Diablo 4. And again, all of these assets already exist, so nothing has to be created or done anywhere new. And then you don't have to give up any of the current content in the game. So you don't have to get rid of nightmare dungeons. You don't have to get rid of hell tides. People can kind of pick their poison of an end game, but you could also potentially use the gauntlet as a way to gear, right? So let's say someone wants to actually level up through the gauntlet because they enjoy that more than nightmare dungeons. And, maybe they're done leveling their glyphs and they just don't want to keep doing the same nightmare dungeons over and over again for that season. They can come into the gauntlet and they can improve on their time in the gauntlet. So let's say it may take them 28 minutes to clear the first 2 floors, but then they get faster and faster, right? So now they can get to floor 10 in 15 minutes, and then they can take the blue portal out. They can get their gear, their loot from that, and then they can, make the judging call if they want to take the jump to floor 11, knowing that they're going to add a seasonal modifier to that floor. And again, I know it says weekly, but I think it should actually be seasonal. So just to explain that again, I think they should set 5 modifiers, before the season starts. So maybe in PTR, they choose their modifiers, and those modifiers stay there all season long. So at floor 50, the +5 modifiers will be the same +5 modifiers for everybody. And then it can scale from there, and you can balance all the builds pre the season launch at that point. Now, another challenge that a lot of people may think this would have is, okay, well, it's just going to be, a run to the portals, right? So a straight line. This was a Greater Rift problem back in the day, where you just start, you run to the end of the line, and then you go down the next floor, and then there's no real disparity, or not really disparity, but diversity to the dungeons. It doesn't have to be that way. You can make multi-path dungeons. All you have to do is add portals to different locations in the dungeon. So if somebody wants to take the left route and that has its own path and own dungeon side, they can do that. If someone wants to take the right route, they can do that. Everyone's just hunting for the portals, right? How fast can you get to the portals? How much can you clear before you get to the portal? And then you get to make the decision, do I exit out, or do I go down deeper in more challenging monsters, more challenging levels that, scale as I go further down into, this labyrinth. And then again, going back to, you can have a race at the very start of the season of who can clear the Uber floor 50 with the +5 modifiers for that season first. And obviously that also gives the hardcore players a challenge, right? Like, how fast can they come up with a build that can handle those seasonal modifiers, and then farm enough gear, have them have a reason to gear hunt to get down to that floor 50 first, right? And you can make this as challenging or unchallenging as you want from a development standpoint. It also gives, again, the developers a constant state flow that they can measure all builds against, so they can say, okay, it's not just going to be Charge Barb season because Charge Barb is just so openly busted that they're just going to be better than everybody else. They can actually, in PTR and testing, say, okay, well, Ball Lightning Sorceress is only able to consistently feel comfortable getting to floor 25, and then it really struggles. So we need to figure out, why is it struggling at floor 25, but Minion Necro is blasting to floor 50, 2 times faster. Well, maybe Minion Necro needs to be pulled back a little bit before the season start, and Ball Lightning Sorcerer needs to be amplified up a little bit, so that everyone feels like they all have an equal opportunity, and it all feels balanced, where you can measure the builds in the game saying, hey, most builds should be able to functionally get to floor 50, with work, with, getting the right gear pieces, getting strong enough, you should be able to scale down to that floor. So this is my concept. I think it could be so much better than the generic, boring score system that they showed in the Campfire. And I think if they just took a little bit more, effort, they could take all the assets they already have. They don't even have to create new bosses. They don't have to create new Ubers. They just need to put it all into one end game system, and then have that system kind of be the system that they utilize to give everybody a more structured end game. You can steal this idea. I don't really care. Please make your game better. That's all I'm really asking. I think this is. I think the Gauntlet is a little underwhelming, and I think you could take it so much further than what it currently was shown as. All right, guys, have a great day.